good to see you, my friend.
Good to be seen. Good to be seen. Yeah, legend would be pushing that term, making it very loose. But I am back. I'm here.
I got to pump your tires, buddy,
Appreciate it.
I see that you were drafted 190th.
Yes. I don't even know if they have 190 picks anymore.
Well, you beat Tom Brady. He was 199. So.
That's the only thing we have in common.
Yeah.
Basically said, yeah, good one. It's pretty funny. We were joking about me getting drafted earlier in the day, making cracks that it could have happened. And one of the guys I was golfing with played junior. We were both making fun of the fact that we were never getting drafted. And I had no idea that Toronto really had me on the radar. So my agent had to get on the phone. He's like, no, that was really the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs that you just told to F off. You actually did get picked by the Leafs. So it was a big surprise. Went out and celebrated that night, obviously. And then I was working in a steel factory at the time. My grandfather, my uncle, my dad, my sister, all steel workers. So I had a part-time gig in there. So I ended up signing my first contract actually in the steel factory. They sent it to me, faxed it, or I guess back then, printed it off and signed it and sent it back. So that was that's how I got started. It's my humble beginnings, not knowing I was getting picked, and then signing it while I was working my real part-time job, I guess.
Did you know anything about Boston before you arrived here? Did you have any?
No, I took the train in once from Lowell when I was playing against the Lowell, which Devils, Lock Monsters, whatever they were that year. They all blend together sometimes. So many times I got punched in the face in that building. But took the train in once, did Cheers, did Fenway, didn't even get into a game because I couldn't afford to scalp tickets. They might have, yeah, no, they were in the playoffs actually. So there were tickets, but we couldn't afford to get in. So it was just me and a buddy. That was about all I knew about Boston. Had to jump in a train to get back before the last train went back out to Lowell. And then coming to training camp, it might have been the only team in the NHL where I hadn't crossed paths with somebody in the minors. So didn't know anything about the city, didn't know anybody on the team. But Cam Neely had called me on July 1st when I was picking in between 3 or 4 different teams that put deals in front of me and just said, I've seen players like you in this market, and I'm not sure you'll find a market that's a better fit for you. And looking back, I thought that was a bold statement. Now looking back, it's probably an understatement. So I loved it. And I didn't know anything about it, but we fully embraced it. My wife and I said, we're going to have to put up with the winters. Every guy I talked to that went to BU or BC that I had played with in the minors, always moved back to Boston, whether they're from there or not. So I was like, there's got to be something in this town. Let's stay there year round, sell our house in Canada. Like, let's get a feel for what the city's all about. I'm really glad we did.
There are guys who just go out there and fight. As a fan, I mean, I've been a season ticket holder for, 10, whatever, 12, 13 years, whatever, and have been around that organization for over 40 years. And you were one of those guys that come out and you skated every shift like it was going to be your last. You did whatever it took to win. You could put the puck in off your head. You didn't care.
I'd take a couple of those. Yeah.
I mean, and those are the type of players like Soupy Campbell was one of my favorite players when he played with the Bruins, because it was just like you could see every time, and that applied with you as well. You could see every time you stepped on the ice, you were so happy to be there.
Yeah.
Do whatever it takes because I'm just completely grateful for this opportunity right now that's being presented to me.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this game has gifted me a lot of things, and I tried not to ever take them for granted. It was every kid in Canada and probably Boston, a lot of other markets, they grow up every single day dreaming about playing for the Stanley Cup or dream about even just putting their skates on and being in the NHL, and we get to live out this dream. And I think people say that and it's just words sometimes, but it truly was a childhood dream to be put in this position. And I didn't try and waste a day. And people would ask me all the time, why are somebody so miserable sometimes? Why are you so happy when you're on the ice? And I really took it as I was lucky to be there. I mean, part of it too, coming from my background and like we talked about, blue collar and steel factory and 9 years in the minors. Like I really embraced the fact that I was in the NHL and I was lucky to be there, and I didn't know when it was going to run out either. And couldn't have been a better guy. I mean, I got brought in and I was one of the guys that was fighting for his spot, and every day in practice I was just waiting for him to grab me and beat the living hell out of me. But giving me advice on the role, on if you're going to take off, if stuff like that. Another story that not a lot of people know, but Ty Domi, when I was with Toronto, grew up watching him play. We're now friends, but I was in the minors my second or third year, I think. I was living in Toronto, not making much in the minors, training, living life. And Ty called me. He's like, let's go for a beer. So we went out, and he actually jammed a bunch of money in my pocket. He's like, you're just like me, you little puke. I remember when I was your age, I was running around spending more than I had. Like, take this and pay your bills, and when you make the NHL, you can pay me back. He said Mark Messier had done that for him.
Yeah, you told me that. I was going to bring that up. I was with him in New York, and he told me the story. Mark Messier gave him $5,000 his first year and said, you're a professional now, dress like it. Go buy yourself some suits.
Yeah, so it took me 7 years to pay Ty back. I was maybe 8 years. I remember we were in Toronto, and he was downstairs. He was talking to Cam, and I came out, and I was like, oh, hold on. And I had like a checkbook in my bag. I ran back in and wrote a check for the money that he put in my pocket to take care of me, almost 10 years earlier. So that was pretty special to me. Like, nobody else really at that point in my life believed that I would ever make the NHL. And again, here's a guy that I'm trying to steal his job that says I'm going to steal his job one day. And that's how much he believes in me. So those are pretty cool touch points for me along my way.
Yeah, it was funny. I was going to bring that up, but he told me that story, and I was in New York for a Rangers Lightning playoff game a few years back, and we were sitting in a box together, and we just started. He was there actually. Was it? Anyway, we were sitting in a box together, and we struck up a conversation. We started talking, blah blah blah, and then he told me that story. He said Mark Messier gave him, I think we said was $5,000, and said, here, and I was like, you know what? Only a hockey player would do that. That's such a hockey player move right there.
I should have did that. Looking back, I should have did it with Luch my first year. The amount of money that guy's made in his career, maybe he would have paid it back tenfold. Might be living off that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He played with Jake DeBrusk's dad. Lou played with him.
Yes, we were roommates.
Make you feel old, right?
Yeah, Jake was in the locker room when I won the cup in Anaheim. He was just a kid back then, so I still talk to Lou. He's a good man. We played together in Chicago. We were roommates. He got his 400th game, and then they sent him down to Norfolk. I got sent down like a month and a half later. It was my first year in the NHL, and then he ended up stepping back and being our assistant coach that year in Norfolk. He was like assistant coach player, but more assistant coach. But we lived one floor above from each other. My wife and his wife, Cindy, used to drink wine together when we were on the road. He's a good man. Yeah, I know them really well. Like I said, they're in our locker room when we won in Anaheim because we have a few mutual friends, and Jake was in there seeing what potentially could be him one day, and he's turned into a heck of a hockey player. That's when I knew I had to retire, by the way, when I heard Jake DeBrusk's name come up on the draft. And I remember tying this kid into knots on the bus in Norfolk. I was like, I'm too old. I got to get out of the game.
Yeah, it's funny. Our friend Steve Diossi told me a story when he played for the Giants. He played with Michael Strahan. And then Steve's son, Zach, went on to play for the Giants. And he walks up to Michael Strahan, and Strahan goes, Diossi. He goes, you related to Steve Diossi? And he goes, yeah, he's my dad. And Michael Strahan goes, that's it. I'm retiring. He retired that year.
Exactly. It's done. We started the season with an exhibition game in Belfast, actually, which ended up being, I think, pretty cool for me. My mom's from there, so it was her first time going back since she had left. So that was cool for me personally. But then we went from Belfast to Prague, and we had a week basically before we played the regular season games. And you get into these areas where, in training camp during the season, we all have families, we all have other things in our towns. And you have other distractions that you can't just get together as a group of guys for 6 nights straight leading into the season. But when you're in Prague, you actually can. And we did. And, the amount of team bonding that went on in those 5-6 days at Belfast and the days leading up to our regular season games, I think really set the tone for how we were going to be as a team for the rest of the season. And we were family. We really were. We had each other's backs. We had layers. We had depth. We played for each other, not with each other. So I think that's how the kicking off of the season was perfect for us. 2011 team, I still talk to all those guys, and they're all in ridiculous shape still. And I just think that's their psyche, that's their mentality, that's how they operate, and that's how we're all just aligned. And I think that work ethic really comes through. And it's not just for the game. I think it's how they're wired, from Sunday to Sunday. It doesn't matter what they're doing. They just put everything into everything they do.
I was pretty good buddies with Axie, with PJ Axelson, and I was in Los Angeles at the time. And when the team would come through, I'd get down the marina there to the Ritz and meet PJ, and we'd go have a dinner or whatever, And so I was picking up one night, and they had just landed, and there's this guy in a full sprint, like running sprints on the medium strip outside that Ritz Carlton there.
Yeah.
And PJ goes, stop, and he rolls down the window, and he's like, Timmy, what are you doing?
Just getting a late night workout in?
Yeah, he's like, workout, And I was just like, wow, I guess that guy's pretty committed,
Wanted to get the legs going after the long flight, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, But yeah, talk about a guy who just persevered and just stayed with it, man. Just kept going,
His numbers in that series and that playoffs are just phenomenal. It's crazy to think about. He's a big reason that he's one of the biggest reasons we won. He was the MVP for a reason. He deserved it.
But I'm gonna pump your tires here for a minute. I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, or maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago. I was sitting at the Garden, and Peter Schalark, I guess Schalark, is that his name? Who is wearing your number now for the Bruins. I took a picture of him and I sent it to you, being a bit of a wise ass that I can sometimes be, and with an emoji of a guy with a teardrop in his eye. And the first thing you said to me in response was, tell him if he's going to wear that number, he better get over to Children's Hospital and see those kids. And I was just like, you know what? That's a hockey player. That's, that sums it up right there. That's what hockey players are about,
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Great. It's just such a unique breed of athlete. So in that championship run, you had 3 Game 7s you had to win, right?
Yes.
To get it through the playoffs. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, what was the mindset there?
For me, I just had the best seat in the house for most of it. Once it got to overtime, we had 3 Game 7s. Nathan Horton was huge for us in those. He really stepped up. I mean, the whole team did, but really, he scored the game winner against Montreal. He scored the game winner against Tampa Bay. I would take it back to the season before when we lost in Game 7 to Philadelphia. I think it changed our mentality. It's not over until it really is over. I mean, that Philly series, we were up 3-0 in the series, and then we were up 3-0 going in the first period, and then ended up losing. Epic collapse, one of the biggest in the history of the sport. But it changed our mentality, and we were a group that never took it for granted, and we brought that into those Game 7s. And the experience of having a few under our belt probably helped as well. I mean, Montreal was. The way Carey Price was playing for Montreal, that's the one I was probably most nervous about. And then I think we swept Philly, then went to Tampa. I was scratched for Game 7, so I probably couldn't give you a feeling of what was going on in the locker room as well. And then Vancouver, we were determined. We were not happy with that team that we were playing against. We had a chip on our shoulder, and as anyone knows that followed us that year, the years prior and after that, we were a team that played better when we were pushed. If you pushed us, we pushed back a lot harder. You're probably better off letting us sleep, to be completely honest. And they pushed, and we wanted to make sure the world knew that we could push back a lot harder. And Game 7, when it got there, there was no doubt in our minds that we were going to take this thing, and from the get-go. And again, built into the mentality of the leadership with Z and Bergie, Nides, myself. We had some guys that just got it, and we wanted it, and we went and took it. Cool story about him, and it's been talked about before. The night before the game, for me on a personal level, and when you talk about Clint Eastwood saying that to you, the night before the game, Rex, we had team dinner in the hotel. Probably wasn't safe to walk around Vancouver at that point anyways. We had a team dinner, and then he called me and said, do you want to come up to the room and have a glass of wine? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. So went up to Rex's room, and he had a bottle that he had bought, I think his rookie year. You have to remember, and he was saving it for the night before his last game. He's like, I always planned on having this, at home with my wife or whoever it might be. He's like, but I'd love for you to share this with me. So we sat there and split the bottle and just talked about guys picked his brain on his career and what we thought about tomorrow. And, there's probably a list of a million people that would have wanted to be that person in that room. And, Rex doesn't think of himself like that. And for me, he's a teammate, a friend, first and foremost. But if I take a step back and look at it and be like, that experience, like, how many people in the world would have killed to be in that room drinking a glass of wine with Rex the night before his last game? So I still find that pretty special. And I asked, the only thing I requested from him is if I could be there when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame, and then I got this job and I couldn't make it. So I felt bad that I couldn't be there, but but well deserved by him. And, couldn't have been a better leader for us. Couldn't have been a better guy. And he really helped with how we approached every single night.
And of course, we've got some parents here who are asking questions. Do you have any advice for young hockey players? As we discussed before, this Boston is such a hockey rich community. Do you have any suggestions for a young hockey player looking to maybe play in high school or?
Yeah, I do. I mean, listen, I was the last kid to make any team and the last kid to get cut on every, like from the time I was 7 years old till my last year pro. So my advice would be have fun. And when you're having fun, it doesn't feel like work. And in turn, you'll end up working harder than everyone else. So there wasn't a day that I went to the rink that it felt like work to me. I really had fun and I embraced every part of it, from the working out to the discipline needed to, get up the next morning and doing everything I needed to be the best professional I was. But I had fun doing it. So as a kid, I remember I had fun playing hockey. It was never, my parents never pushed me to run stairs. They never pushed me to go outside and stick handle for 2 hours. Never. It's always my advice to parents, like, make the game as fun as possible and you will get more out of the game than you could ever imagine. But it can't feel like work, especially at a young age, because you'll burn out. I mean, if it felt like work to me, not sure I ever would have played past 16 years old. It was always fun for me.
Tell us a little bit about the Shawn Thornton Foundation, which I've played in your tournament, I think, every year that you've had it, because I know that you know where I live, and I get a punch in the face, so I just show up. No, you do great work with the foundation. Why don't you tell us, the folks, a little bit about that, Shawn?
Yeah, thanks. So the good thing about the lockout is that one of the good things, we didn't get paid, so that was not the good part, but it forced me to start thinking of other ways that I can give back a little bit. And during a lockout, you're not allowed to talk to anybody in the organization. Basically, there's like a hard cut, and the Bruins Foundation actually helped me start my golf tournament, and I didn't want to lose that golf tournament. I started in honor of my late grandmother, and it meant a lot to me. And the Bruins were amazing getting it off the ground. But then we're getting into like November, December, and I'm not sure if we're going to have a season. If there's no season, that means I can't help the Bruins can't help me do this. So with some help from a lot of friends, ours truly, Tom Tinlin, a couple others that we started with, decided that we should start a foundation. And the main reason was to save the golf tournament at the time. And it turned into something much bigger and something I'm very proud of. We've raised north of $1 million now. I'm very proud that every single dollar that comes in goes right back out. So nobody takes a salary, everybody just volunteers their time. So we have two main events and one smaller one, the golf tournament being the biggest one. Usually in August, we try and have celebrities for every foursome. We cap the amount of foursomes, so we're never a big fan of the 6 and 7 hour golf tournaments. They drive me nuts. So Chap, you've heard me yell at people in the course, like, let's get this moving. It's got to be 4.5 hours or I'm not happy. So we cap it, keep it more enjoyable. I mean, we could probably make a little bit more money if we opened it up, but I feel like it's been so successful for the last 7-8 years because we make it enjoyable. The other way is marathon. We have a marathon team that runs every year. They, commit to raise a certain amount of money for the foundation and in turn get a bib to run in the Boston Marathon. We're happy to have them. Every bib that we get, we are very, thankful for being able to get them. We're very thankful for runners wanting to run for a foundation in my name, which is probably not the most original name, but I wasn't in charge of creative back then. So, and then the Falmouth Road Race as well. We have 10 to 15 runners for the Falmouth Road Race. So yeah, we have a website. You can donate on the website if you feel like giving $5, $10, $15 to the runners or just the foundation. We split the money 50-50 between Parkinson's because of the main tie to my family and my grandmother and why we got it off the ground. And then we've talked about it a couple of times, a little on this call, but in my career, I did a lot of hospital visits. They meant a lot to me. It's hard not to be touched by those kids when you're in there. So the other 50% goes to pediatric cancer as well.
That's great, Shawn. And is it just Shawn Thornton Foundation.com? Is that how you donate?
ThorntonFoundation.org. And I think on Twitter, it's at Thornton FDN. Instagram, same thing, at Thornton FDN.
And do we have a date for the golf event this year?
Yeah, we have a tentative date of August 25th. I'm hoping, again, the eternal optimist, I'm hoping that we're still able to have that and we'll have people showing up. So that's.
And we appreciate your time. And, you may be from Canada. You now live in Florida, but you'll always be one of our guys, Thorty.
I appreciate it, Chappie. I appreciate it. It's good to catch up. I was happy to do this, and I'll let her know for sure.
I look forward to seeing you at the golf trip this year, at the golf outing.
Definitely, bud.
All right, good luck. Take care.
Thanks, guys.